Do I regret Zhongli? Now, this is a sometimes open and shut case. I would say, honestly, it's not so open and shut nowadays, because he's lost a lot of his value. And the final answer, by the way, is just going to be no, because I still do think that he's very useful when I want to use him. But in particular, this team now exists on my account, whereas instead of Shilonen before, I would be using Zhongli. And now I have Shilonen, and there's no point in using Zhongli. And it's basically the same story for Nevi, and if I was smart with Nevi, I would have gotten to C1, and Zhongli's interruption resistance wouldn't have mattered anyways. And generally, Zhongli has lost a lot of his value on my account. Do I regret summoning on him? No, because the guy is still what he is from day one. He will get the job done in protecting you. That is the number one thing that he can do. He will keep you safe. However, the more crazy supports we've gotten over the year, basically last year, because it didn't happen between Sumeru. Sumeru didn't really have crazy supports, right? But Fontaine certainly did, and then we came in with Natlin, and that they released Shilonen, which is just Kazuha basically, but she heals, right? That's how that works. I think that Zhongli, through the release of Shilonen, has lost a lot of his power on my account. Very few characters I would even consider using Zhongli with, and that would probably be just a double Geo team with Yoimiya and then Shilonen Zhongli, and maybe we use like Yelan, right? Maybe that would be the team. But overall, I would say Shilonen has hurt Zhongli overall. Especially with my C2R1 Shilonen, she really is just a no-brainer option whenever I'm building a team that, oh yeah, I can just use this character, right? And I mean, there's just not really much to say, because even with C1 Shilonen, she's also providing a little bit of interruption resistance, which can definitely help with, you know, characters like Nevi and Risley, right? Risley is a character that can get hit out of his 5th hit, which at C1 procs his charge attack buff, which can absolutely hurt you in the end. But with Shilonen, she provides a little bit of an extra resistance towards that, to where it doesn't really happen as often, and very few enemies are actually going to be able to hit him out of his 5th hit. Whereas, you know, with Zhongli, it's perfect protection, but it's less buff. And it's especially a lesser buff because 60% crit damage to cryo characters is pretty nice, yeah. I mean, I don't really think that it's a huge buff, actually, if you really look at him. I just, Risley, from the crit damage here, it didn't really get that big of a buff, I'm going to be honest. I never really saw a huge damage increase with Risley from that 60% crit damage. However, that 60% crit damage increases the gap even more from Zhongli and Shilonen for power buffing, right? Zhongli, my set that I run him on is Tenacity. People do run him on Archaic Bullite or whatever. Let's see, which one is it, guys? You want to do a little class session? Archaic Petra. Yeah, that is the one, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's this one where people will use this and they will buff the element for only 10 seconds, and then it's not nearly as good as the thing, because I'm pretty sure for this isn't nearly as good as Shieldon's, because as you can see, upon obtaining an elemental shard created through crystallized reaction, you have to obtain that elemental shard, and that's not really that great, I'm going to be honest. I don't... Like, you have to specifically make sure to hunt down and get that shard. It's not that great. And then again, it only lasts for 10 seconds. Whereas Shieldon's artifact set on her just gives you an extra, what, 20 seconds? Yeah, 20 seconds. So yeah, Shieldon being able to use first in rotation is also something people underrate a lot, because that is a huge thing with Kazuha. His short durations do cause you to have some issues with his buffs running out, along with his reses being completely nullified as soon as you go up against some new opponents, right? And if you're not using a character like Arlecchino, Kazuha's res isn't easily refreshable, which brings me to my next point. Zhongli also does do that. He does decrease the res by 20%, which is pretty good, I'm going to be honest. Like, that's not bad. All in all, if you were to look at every single buff that Zhongli can give, he can give you basically full-on interruption resistance, never be interrupted, 15% damage bonus, assuming you're not running Archaic Bullide, and then, or Petra, we just looked at it and I already forgot. Or he can give you 20% attack, or what is it? What does Tenacity give? Tenacity gives 20% attack, so 20% attack, 15% damage bonus, and 20% res shred and invulnerability to being staggered, basically. Really nice effects, but it's all in low amounts, to the point where you oftentimes don't really see Zhongli as like a high DPS option, right? And also, don't forget that the Tenacity of the Millith isn't perfect either. You do have to hit enemies with your elemental skill in order to proc its effects, which can definitely hurt, right? And the effects only last for 3 seconds, so it's not really that great. At like peak, it'll be working, but most of the time, I'm going to be honest, tenacity is not active. Like, there's very few situations where the enemy is continuously stood by the Zhongli pillar whenever I've used it. Overall, tenacity is just not a good set. It would be nice if we got another set that he could work with that wasn't, a 10-second duration, because once again, he is a really good shielder and his duration is 20 seconds. It would be nice if we had this guy at the start of a rotation being able to do that, because a lot of the times when you're using this guy, you're not going to want to have this guy be mid-rotation or at the end of a rotation. You want to use this guy first. That is when you want to do this guy, and that also messes with the artifacts that they have him with. So if Petra also had that 20-second timer, honestly, Zhongli would be thought of as a very strong character, but this doesn't really have that 20-second timer. So what you're going to end up doing is you're going to use his shield, and then you're going to waste like 70% of the time on this, and your DPS is going to have like 1 second of actual uptime. It really is not a cohesive, fluent, like flow. Like, it's not a flow that just is super easy to do. It's just something that ends up, sort of getting in your way, which is why I've never really felt the need to farm this set, because it just really doesn't feel like it provides a lot. And Zhongli doesn't really need to do that, because the main reason why you look at this set for Zhongli is if you're running him. And Zhongli, a lot of the times, does not need to provide a buff, right? If you're using Zhongli, you're using him on characters that can already easily clear Abyss, and you're just doing it so you don't have to really focus on them dying. Like Zhao, Arlecchino, you can just turn into a left-click simulator and wipe out entire Abyss floors within just a minute, right? It's really nice. So overall, Zhongli, he has a lot of weird oddities to his kit, but he's been so strong in terms of his shield for the longest time that I really don't see this guy being that bad anytime soon. He is a good shielder, and I think that overall he still does the same role that he does today. If you want to use the character, then you'll use him, but 99% of the time, you never need to use him anymore, right? It used to be that he was a character you could slap on the team, and you wouldn't really lose a lot. I'm gonna be honest. It felt like you weren't gonna lose a lot from having Zhongli on the team, but now with the introduction of Xilunen, a lot of the teams that I make feel like it's sort of like if I put Zhongli on here, I lose so much buffs. I just lose so much buffs, right? Well, I'm not saying that I regret Zhongli. I don't really feel like he's that guy anymore. I do think that he's lost a lot of value with Shilunen's release, especially because they're the same element, and especially because he was sort of the same element. You could still use him with Nevi and stuff. I did the whole video on him. I cleared with a whole bunch of DPSs the entire new Abyss, right? I did that. I could have done it with more DPSs. It's just that, this guy, nowadays, teams are so refined that it's getting to the point where it's like, if you're not using the optimal character, it can end up losing 300,000 damage per rotation on a character, right? Especially when you're looking at this kind of team, right? With my Arlecchino here. If you're looking at this kind of team, the damage difference between having Xilunen here and then having Zhongli here is insane, right? The amount of damage that I can get from just having Xilunen here instead of Zhongli is... It's a lot, and I might make a video on it with just sort of Nevi and Arlecchino doing that as a sort of pairing video, just to see how it works, right? Because I mean, it overall is generally gonna end up C2 Xilunen is too strong to not use, and she takes Zhongli's spot. That's the thing. So yeah, I don't really have any other thoughts on Zhongli. I think that overall he's still pretty good. It's just it's like Hu Tao. I don't want to use Hu Tao. I never use Hu Tao. But she's still good. If you use her, it's not like you're gonna... It's not awful, right? But, I have Arlecchino here, and she's gonna do better, and she's gonna be better. Why would I use that other option, right? That's my... because I like destroying the game. I like making the game bend over for me. I just like destroying the game. A lot of people don't really get that. They don't like Unga Bunga Big Number, but I do. So that's how I like to play the game. You play however you want. I don't care. But overall, when the stronger character comes out, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. That's what I'm gonna summon for. That's what I'm gonna, have fun with. Because that's generally how I enjoy the game, and I think a lot of other people enjoy the game the same way. I think most people honestly enjoy the game like that too, because a lot of people, when it comes time for the gacha to hit top grossing, it's usually the strongest characters, not necessarily the most popular, gonna be honest. Like, Hu Tao is nowhere near as broken as she used to be, and I don't think a lot of people like Hu Tao because of the way that she acts in story. I think they like her because she was the broken character. Like, Hu Tao is iconically broken. That is where she is, because at the beginning of this game, they released that character and thought nothing of it, and she was, like, broken. I do wish I got Hu Tao when she first came out, because I do wonder, like, how insanely busted it would have been. I do wonder, because, like, we got Yoimiya, who was on par with her, and then we also had Ayaka, and then we got Raiden. Like, all these sort of powerhouses in 2.0 era came out, and they've all sort of, other than Yoimiya, I would say, and Ayaka, and Raiden, Hu Tao's gotten a couple buffs, alright? And I think that's where a lot of Hu Tao fans come from, is they just loved her because she was so broken, and it was fun to play her and one-shot everything with charge attacks, right? That's how I feel like people are coming from. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Make sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.